Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Serge. For those of you who don't know, welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Mark V Supra. So, I'm on a lot of forums. I'm on a bunch of Facebook groups. Forums are kind of dead now, but a bunch of Facebook groups. I have a pretty big Facebook feed. A lot of friends on Facebook. The biggest thing everybody seems to be talking about today is the Mark V Supra. It was officially released this morning, a couple hours ago. Got all the stats and figures on it. Got the actual look with non-leak looks. And personally, I like the car. I actually like it a lot. What I like about it, I love its styling. I think it looks great. I think minor lip kit is needed, front, side skirt, stuff like that. And I think it will look almost identical to the FT1. It's not going to have as low as the roofline and slightly not as wide. But if you wanted to, I'm sure they'll make wide body kits and stuff like that. But for a stock car, I think it looks great. In my opinion, it probably looks better than the Mark IV did stock. And a lot of people are going to be like, what, you're crazy. Well, back in 93, when the 93 Supra came out, if you look at all the reviews, the car and driver, the road and track, everything, nobody praised that car and its looks at all. I don't think it looked that great. Most people back then didn't think it looked that great. It looks good. It's a good looking car. It's nothing that's going to be like, oh, that's hideous, but it's nothing that's like, oh my god, that looks great. The car still needs, a lip kit from the factory, still needs to be lowered, the Mark IV does. Nothing really about it's like, oh my god. People nowadays see a Supra and they go, wow, look at that. But it's just because of the name of what it's grown to be, because of its tuning potential, not because, oh my god, that car's dropped that gorgeous. We're not talking about an F40 and F50 or McLaren F1 or whatever car you might like only for its styling, even if it had zero performance. There's a lot of cars that are like that, but the Supra was never one of them. The Supra got to its legendary status because of how easy it was to tune, and then because they didn't sell well in the 90s, there's a somewhat limited number of them, at least in the US. So they're not seen as much. So when you see a Supra, you're like, wow, look at that Supra, because we're all used to going on YouTube and looking at 1,000 horsepower Supras, 1,500 horsepower, these crazy numbers. And I think all of that hype in the last 20 years, not 20, actually 20 years, 98 to now, since the last Supra was made, we built this hype around the Supra that no matter what came out, it would have been disappointing. Everybody's like putting this car on such a high level that anything under, GC3 RS performance, GC2 RS performance is like, oh, Toyota screwed up. So I'll go into it. Some of the complaints people have. People don't like the looks, that's subjective. I can't say anything about that. But the biggest complaint was that Toyota gave us the FT1 and then the Supra came out and it looks nothing like it. And they're very close looking cars in my opinion. Like I said, it needs to be lowered, needs to get a lip kit, but it's gonna look very close to the FT1. What people don't realize is Toyota can't just be like, here's an FT1 and this is the production car, because FT1, if you look at it, it has a very aggressive splitter, front lip splitter. It's got the side skirts. It's a pretty low car, and when it was in auto shows and in the pictures. It's not really mass producible. It's like Chevy offering a ZR1 at 50,000. Most of its customers, not that they would mind that, but most of its customers are going to drive and destroy those bumpers, their side skirts and everything. You look at, the FT1, it's very aggressively styled. Probably more aggressive than the LFA was. And the LFA was an extremely limited production car. They lost money on all of them that they made, and the people who are buying it are not going to be your average grandma and grandma or average consumer that wants sports, a sports car. It's going to be someone that knows what they want. They want to spend big money on that because they understand what the car is and what it was to produce. With the Supra being geared more towards the public, for everyone, because people think it's going to be only Mark IV Supra car enthusiasts. It's going to be anyone that wants a sporty car that trusts Toyota dependability, even though it is BMW engine. A lot of people, I know a lot of people that will buy Toyota because of their past experiences. So if somebody wants something that performs and they're going to see this available, they'll buy it. So you can't make a car that's 3 inches off the ground for your average consumer. It's just not going to work. So I think the styling is probably as close as they could have made to the FT1 without giving it that FT1 without making it too unpractical or impractical. The roof would have been nice if it was a little bit lower to match the FT1, but I don't, obviously we don't know how the Supra or the Mark V feels inside. If it's cramped, maybe the higher roof is for more headroom. We don't know. So everything that I've seen styling wise, I like, because I know with minor tweaks, it's going to be a very good looking car. The seats to me look very good. Not a big fan of the BMW like center console and all that inside, but it's really not bad. It is a great improvement over the 90s styling that Toyota's had, and it's probably a great improvement over what they have now themselves. The other complaint I hear, besides the styling, which I said is subjective, the engine. Everybody hates the fact that BMW put an engine, it's a BMW engine trans in this car. Everybody's calling it a Z4 or whatever. If you look at the options, think about it this way. The Mark IV Supra came out in '93, I think fully loaded. It was around 42,000, which equates to 75,000 in today's money. This car is going for sale for 50,000 and 55, which I think is a very good price point for it, because you reach a high mark of what people are going to pay for Toyota nowadays. We as car guys, we understand Toyota, Lexus, it's pretty much the same thing. One is just more luxurious than the other. But the majority of the public, they look at Toyota and they're not going to pay a ton of money for it. So if Toyota made the Supra $90,000 or $100,000 to compete with the GTR, stuff like that, it wouldn't sell well. Nobody's going to pay that much money for a Toyota. That's what it is. Especially on mass produce. If you make 500 of them and that's it, yeah, you have a market. If you're going to try to sell thousands, hundreds of thousands, or whatever they're trying to sell, it's not going to work. The Mark IV Supra did terrible in sales. The R35 GTR does terrible in sales. It's made for enthusiasts, but as far as business, they're not smart cars. So I think Toyota is trying to reach a middle ground here. So the fact that they combined with BMW an already, somewhat proven engine and platform, it saves us money. It makes the car cheaper for us. With that said, a lot of guys are like, oh, the LC500 should have been the new Supra. Oh, the ISF engine, the RCF engine should have been in this. Well, here's two things that I'll dispute. The ISF or the RCF engine, great engines, I love them, but they have no support whatsoever. No aftermarket support. It's an NA engine, to turbo it or supercharge it, it's extremely expensive. The ISF has been out for 10 years now, and I think a year ago there was ECU tuning available with a supercharger kit. It's like 10 grand to gain 100 horsepower. So there is no aftermarket support on that engine, and I think it's important for the Supra to have aftermarket support. As far as the LC500, it has power, but the LC500, let's be honest, is a pig. It's 4,400 pounds. Excuse me. It's 4,400 pounds. Nobody wants to drive a sports car that weighs 4,400 pounds. And I know the Supra back in the day was a Grand Touring coupe, but Grand Touring back in the day was 3,400 pounds, like the new one is right now. Not 4,400 pounds where you're driving or rowing your boat. I drove a Challenger the other day. It was boring as shit, because straight line speed at the end of the day can only be used for a very minimal amount of time. Whereas the way your car feels on the road comes from its weight. And that's why I think the weight is very important. So I'm glad that they kept the weight down on this thing, 3,400 pounds, and gave it the ability to make power. Which gets to my next point. The B58 engine from BMW should be a great engine, especially with lots of aftermarket support. The N54, which was the earlier generation B58, we'll call it, was great. There was people making 700-800 horsepower on them stock, and there's some that are almost at 1,000, with a closed deck block. The B58 is essentially the same engine with the closed deck block, so there is ability to make power there. I think 450 at the wheels is available with basic BPU mods, so it's gonna have power. Within a month or two of release, there will be downpipes and tunes, and the car is going to be a 3,400 pound, 400 plus horsepower at the wheels, fun car to drive, and that's what we as enthusiasts should want. Now, one of my only gripes with the car is the lack of manual. I understand automatic shifts faster, whatever you want to say, PDK, DCT, bullshit, whatever. To me, manual is more fun. With that said, I hear next year they're supposed to bring out the manual because BMW does have the manual transmissions for it. So hopefully next year it will be available with the manual. I would certainly buy it if it was available with the manual. With an automatic, I don't think I'll buy it unless something extraordinary happens, but I don't plan on buying it. So, we've addressed its looks, we've addressed its, power, the engine. Obviously, this is my opinion. You guys could have different opinions. The other thing that people complain about is, well, there's nothing on this car that says it's a Supra besides the badge. There's no characteristics. Well, I think that's wrong, because if you look at the 2nd gen Supra, the 3rd gen, the 4th gen, now the 5th gen, there's nothing that goes from one generation to the other. It's not like the GTR where they kept their taillights, the round circles on the R32 to the R33 to the R34 with similar aspects of the engine, stuff like that. The Supra never had that. It hopped around every generation, was essentially a new car. If you had marketed the Mark IV as some brand new model, let's say, it was the Highlander before the Highlander came out, you just gave it that name, nobody would say, oh, no, that looks like a Mark III Supra. Because there's no big similarities on them. So with the Mark V, it doesn't need to have Mark IV taillights. It doesn't need to have the cockpit aimed at the driver like the Mark IV had. But what it does need to have is it needs to carry that heritage. And the heritage with the Supra was always a coupe. It was a somewhat fun to drive car. Definitely not their smallest in their lineup. Still isn't. The FRS is definitely smaller. And what made the Mark IV famous, which is why they made this Mark V, is the ability to make power. And I think the B58 is going to give you that. It's going to give you the tuning ability. It's going to give you the ability to make whatever power you want. And now you have a Toyota chassis that looks good. I think it's going to be a hit. I don't think it's going to be like a groundbreaking car in any way. I think it'll probably get love from a lot of enthusiasts if it does come out with a manual, because there are a lot of people like me that just don't want the automatic. But I think the car will do well with enthusiasts and the general public, which is what you want a car to do. Because when you try to make an enthusiast-only vehicle in a mass-produced number, it doesn't work out. It never has, really. And that's why every time, like when the Supra was made originally, it failed. And people will say, oh, there's, Dodge makes the Challenger, Hellcat, the Demon, but Dodge also makes the Challenger, the base V6. They make the Charger in a V6. They make all these cars that still appeal to the mass produced. So I think the fact that this car is geared both towards people that just want a sporty coupe, that's a Toyota, they'll like this car. And I think enthusiasts will eventually start liking it once they see it could still make tons of power. You know, anytime a new car, a new generation comes out, it always gets flagged. The C7 Corvette was hated on. Now the C8 is supposed to come out, and that's even more hated on. The R35 was hated on. I think back in 2008, the STI, when it was brand new body style from the Hawkeye, changed. Everybody hated it. They couldn't sell them for shit. They were going $10,000 under MSRP. And now it's fine. Everybody likes those cars. People don't like change. They don't like new things. Even though they want new things, they don't like to accept what comes with it. Everybody's wanted essentially Toyota to come out with the Mark V Supra with a 2JZ in it, making 950 horsepower stock, and it's just not going to happen. So I think we as car enthusiasts should be happy we got a 3,400 pound coupe that has the ability with bolt-ons to make 450 horsepower without changing a whole lot, and hopefully we'll get a 6-speed. And if you actually look at the car without being too critical of it, it's a good looking car. I don't know if you guys want an F1 car in the street. Stuff like that is not practical. It wouldn't really sell. It would sell to car enthusiasts like you and me who can drive carefully over speed bumps, stuff like that. But the average person is not that. So it gives us the ability to tune the cars, to add body kits, aero, whatever you want to call it. But I think everybody's being extremely hard on this car. They did test it in Nürburgring. I'm hoping it gets somewhere in the 7-minute range, somewhere the high 7s. I don't know exactly, but it should be a fairly good car. It should be fun to drive every day. It should be fun to tune. It should have the single turbo aftermarket support, and I think that's what the car needs. I don't think the car would do as good or as well if they just gave us $100,000 Supra making 600 horsepower. For us it would be cool, but for a business standpoint it wouldn't really work. So I think it's a good car. Those are my final thoughts. I think it's a great car. Whether it's epic or fantastic, I don't think it is, but to me the Supra never was. People made the Supra epic or fantastic, but from the factory it never got great reviews. It got good reviews, but everybody always said, oh, it's too expensive, and that's what ended up killing it because it didn't sell. So those are my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. Tune in more if you can. Subscribe to my channel. I appreciate all the views, comments, and share your opinion on the Supra. What do you think of it? I tried to be as honest and subjective as I could. So thank you guys.